Thank you all for joining us for today's Test Manager webcast, Test Metrics and Their Use in Test Manager and TFS 2010, presented by Byron Goodman. My name is Meredith Mead, and I'm the Marketing Coordinator for Neudesic and the moderator for today's webcast. This webcast is presented by Byron Goodman, Neudesic's Director of Quality Assurance. If you're all logged on, you should be able to see a title slide that states Neudesic. There was a brief intro earlier regarding features within Live Meeting. To briefly recap, we encourage you to ask questions throughout the session by typing them in. To ask a question, click on the Q&A button located in the toolbar on the top left side of your screen. Type your question, then click the Ask button. Please note all questions will be held until the end. We will also be using the seating chart feature within Live Meeting. Changing your feedback color within this tool provides feedback to the presenter. To provide feedback, click on the feedback menu from the upper right-hand corner of your screen. Select your feedback color. Your seat in the conference center will display your selected color. Lastly, this webcast is being recorded, and we will be sending out a link to view this recording once it becomes available. If everyone is ready, please make sure your seat color is green, and at this time I'd like to pass it over to Byron.
Good day, everybody. Nice to be back talking to you all. Let me go ahead and share my desktop, and we'll get the slide underway here. So, like Meredith said, today we'll be talking about TFS 2010, Agile and Metrics. It's just part of my ongoing series of the different features of TFS 2010, what we can do to make life better for us. Today we're going to explore some of the concepts around Agile and Metrics, and then how TFS 2010 facilitates gathering some of that information. So first of all, let's just think about what we're going to have. This is just a little bit of review of metrics here. Just talk about our types of metrics. You're going to have your short-term metrics and your sprint level metrics, which is usually what the team themselves will be focused on. Then you'll also have some thinking around longer-term or enterprise-level metrics, and I'll go over what some of those are in a little later. And the examples that I'm going to be showing are partial representation of metrics. You may need to define what metrics work best for your organization. I'm just giving some ideas of what are out there, and you may have some different opinions about what you find to be useful within your particular organization or within your project teams, and that's okay. I'm certainly not here to tell you exactly what you need to do. I'm just throwing out some ideas for you. I think it is important that I have a little caveat here around metrics. Interpretation of data may lead to incorrect conclusions, and that's certainly a risk of using the wrong data to justify or to analyze it in such a way to come to a conclusion that maybe that data was never really intended for. So metrics need to be gathered and used with intent, meaning that when you decide that you want to measure the effectiveness of some type of operation that you are actively doing within your project, you need to really think about what it is that you're going to use to measure that effectiveness, and make sure that the way that you interpret your data is correct. So it's real easy to use the data in such a way to either bolster your argument that things are fine or not fine. So you just have to be very, very careful. And of course, just to quote Mark Twain, lies, damn lies, and statistics. So it's real easy to take data and use it in such a fashion that it really does not speak the truth. And we want the metrics to help us speak the truth, to really understand what's going on within our organization, within the project. So let's just talk about some about short-term metrics. Well, usually I consider short-term metrics that are needed to understand the current state of the sprint and the software. And it can feed into retro discussion. So as you're working on your sprint cycle or leading into a sprint cycle, these types of metrics, short-term, you want to use to just kind of keep an eye on the ball, understand where things are right now, and understand how that is going to indicate success or perhaps lack of success on the team on your current effort. Here's some of the things that you might use to measure your short-term success, which is code coverage in the form of unit tests, defect trends, which I'll show some examples of these, but are you starting to trend more defects or fewer defects? Are you trending more towards a resolution of defects? So you want to be able to say, well, just kind of how is the quality of my software trending at this point in time? Other metrics might be the number of tests defined for your stories. I would say that if you don't have very many tests for stories, you probably don't have good coverage, which might be an indicator of lack of focus on quality. Kind of your testing progress. It's good to have your tests defined, but has the team had the time to execute the tests? Have the tests been passing? Are tests blocked? Bug reopen rate is another good indicator of just how the software is right now. If you have a tendency to not be reopening bugs, then chances are you are not breaking things as you're continuing through your process of writing new code, which is, I think, a real important indicator of just how fragile your application may be, or just how well the team that's working on the software really understands the interaction of the components. Test impact. That's a nice feature within Visual Studio that says, hey, because of changes that you've made to the application, here are tests that we figured out are going to need to be re-executed. So if you make one small change and you turn around and have to run 150 tests for that, well, you get a pretty good understanding of just what kind of success the team may or may not have depending on time. So if those 150 tests pop up and you only have an hour left in your sprint cycle, it might be an indicator that you're going to have some kind of problem there. And of course, code churn. Code churn is important to know that if you've got a 2-week sprint and you've churned 50,000 lines of code, then there's a lot of stuff going on there that may not lead to great success within the sprint itself. Long-term metrics, those are things, and why I classify them, they have a different focus. So long-term metrics you'll use to understand overall value associated with software delivery. As this is more from a business perspective. So if I am wanting to have a modification done to my software, or maybe to the software that's being sold, I need to know that the value that or what I'm getting from the project teams is indeed value. So it's important from a business perspective that we actually make money off of the activity that teams are doing. From a quality assurance perspective, organizationally, you're also going to look for opportunities for improvements at the enterprise level. There may be opportunities that the teams in general are just missing, that maybe someone who's got a higher level view can take a look at, see trends, and say, well, if we modify this just a little bit, it might streamline some of what's going on. It may say conditions of satisfaction may be more clear. There's just going to be opportunities for somebody at a higher level to take a look and kind of understand what's going on from an enterprise level. Well, there's always project or product release management planning as well. Even though Agile says, well, we deliver based upon priority, it is good to know that especially if you're selling shrink-wrap software, when you can let people expect the latest and greatest release and maybe what's going to be in that release. It's understanding how teams are able to take on a certain amount of story points or velocity will certainly facilitate in that release management planning. And of course, something that I think are on everybody's minds on the business side is yearly budgeting and project funding based upon the business priorities and strategy. So you want to use metrics to help understand how much money we should give these teams, because what's our ROI, all that good stuff. Also, what's business priority and what's strategy. So from year to year, from budget to budget season, software is going to have different priorities and based upon the needs of the business. I'm going to be mostly focusing on short-term metrics rather than long-term, but I just want to make everybody feel comfortable that there is a difference, and we'll have some delineation there. Some of the things that we use long terms, I put velocity in here just because it kind of leads into some of the other the prior slide. Although you can use velocity as a short term to determine just how much work a team should be able to tackle within a particular sprint. Some other long-term metrics you're going to be able to follow is software stability. All right, over time, just how great is the software when it's deployed out into the real world. Overall readiness of the application. So you talk about release management, just how ready is the application and everything that goes around it, its ability to be supported, its operationalization of the application, if you will. Cost effectiveness, are we really spending our money where the priorities really are? Are we getting that ROI? Is this something that's actually making the business money? Code debt is another long-term metric. It's usually something that gets paid off over time, and it fits within your priority and the strategy of the software, as well as quality debt. I classify those as two different things because, well, I don't want to go into why at this point in time, so I could probably spend another 15, 20 minutes on that. But there needs to be a realization that perhaps there was a decision made that said, hey, we're willing to make a little bit of trade-off here in terms of maybe some schedule or features that we're going to have to jump back in later on and tackle those. Well, so let's talk about TFS 2010. TFS 2010 does have a lot of ability to supply metrics without very much effort at all. So it's important within an agile effort especially, that not a lot of extra effort needs to go into setting up the metrics and be able to access the metrics and be able to create reports off the metrics. TFS definitely gives you a lot of metric goodness out of the box, a lot of reports that are in place, a lot of data that gets automatically gathered. And understand that you can build upon those reports easily. You can easily add more data points to the data that's being gathered. And I won't go over that at this point in time. That's I'm not going to get into the templates and how to set that up at this point in time, but you can have that capability in there. Some metrics are a byproduct of typical activities that occur during a sprint. So when you write a defect and the life cycle of that defect, all the information about that's being gathered and stored away, so you can go on later on and pull that information and see how maybe the group of defects just kind of work themselves out over time. Other metrics are gathered by enabling features in TFS or in Visual Studios like code coverage. So these are things that are not out of the box. Code coverage is not something you're necessarily going to get a historical on, depending on how you have things set up. And it's definitely something you need to set up. It's not something that's necessarily out of the box. And I'll go over that as well. So rather than sit here and talk about, have you guys look at slides, what I prefer to do, of course, is to go into TFS and actually show you some of these capabilities. We'll mostly be going through the canned reports and showing how you can interpret some of that data. But then I'll give you a little demonstration also on how to set some of these up. So without further ado, let me go ahead and go into into my virtual. And I apologize, my virtual is a little bit slow, so we might be sitting here and looking at a spinning cursor for a while, hopefully not too much. If someone has a question while this is going on, maybe you can go ahead and submit it, and Meredith can read it off, and I can answer it. So some of these things might take a couple minutes to get going. First thing we'll do is we'll get Visual Studio started. I'm just going to run in there and show you code coverage. So let me go ahead and load my solution. Some of this data that I'll be going through also is a little bit stale, so and it's not a whole lot of it. Again, I apologize, but I want to give you an idea of what it is that we have available to us and kind of give you an understanding of just how it lays it out for you. Solution is getting spun up, and it's getting prepared. We're getting closer. We're getting more and more excited. So first thing I'll do is I'll start by just showing you where to do your code coverage, and it's not very difficult to do. We have to make sure we have a solution started because this is set up by the solution. Here's where you set your options. Oops, that's nice. I just dislodged that unintentionally. Let me place it backward. So I got it. Yeah, well, that's good enough. So I'll go to to the solution. I've got it selected. I can go up to test, and I'm going to have test settings. That's still spinning up, so let's wait for it to get done doing what it's doing. Jumping the gun a little bit here. And you'll see right now we've got two test settings that are set up. I'll go ahead and select local. And this is just part one of a couple things that have to get done. What we'll do is we go to Data and Diagnostics, and within here, you'll see that we've got the opportunity, the option to set up code coverage. I'll go ahead and set that, and I'll go ahead, and you can configure now. So code coverage is one thing. Next thing you have to do is tell Visual Studio what it is that you want set code coverage up on. And you can go in here and set up what modules you feel are the correct ones. And so I'll go ahead and select some of the default ones, hit OK. And it's going to sit here and think for us for a little while. The exciting part of the demo here is where we got to watch my mouse. I'll jump it around a little bit so you guys can see that. There it goes. And I'll go ahead and say apply. And it's going to, hopefully this doesn't let my system bog down too much, but it's going to go through and do a little bit of work with the code so that it can figure out the code coverage. Now, code coverage is around unit testing is the way I have it set up right now. If you have automated testing, you'll get the same goodness out of that. And it says it applied. I'll go ahead and close it. Now I can come over to my build definitions, and we'll get that here expanded out. Still thinking, there we go. I'll select my build that I have defined, and we'll go ahead and edit. And we'll get some of the options here for our build. Still loading. And I think in the interest of time, I won't actually execute the build because we'll be sitting here waiting for a while on that as well. So we'll just make sure that we have this set up. So it says perform code analysis. Now you can come in here, and right now it's set to never, so we would not get code analysis in the default setup. But there's a couple other options here. You can say as configured, which means that if I'm using the test file setting that has it already configured, it'll use that as default. Notice this one has my other test default setting. I would have to come in here and set it to local. Like that, and hit OK. And now it would, when it runs the unit test, it's going to get code coverage. And what code coverage is going to say is, hey, you had so many assemblies here that you wanted me to check, and here's the number of blocks that you had in this assembly. The unit tests you have exercise the code this many blocks of code and did not exercise this other set of blocks. And you're going to be looking for, in my mind, because I'm a quality assurance guy, I like to see 80% plus. I'd love to see 100%. But it gets more and more difficult. And just like everything else, you can have 100% code coverage, but if you have no asserts at all in your unit test, you're not testing anything. So it really is not a 100% indicator of success, but it's just saying, hey, at least your unit tests are attempting to cover this code, but it's really up to you to make sure that the tests are actually doing something that's purposeful. I'll go ahead and close out of this. Again, we won't run the tests in the interest of time. I'm worried that we'd sit here for another 6 minutes listening to me talk and not actually show you anything. All right. So other things that we get to see through the metrics is over here. If we look in Team Explorer, a lot of the things that we have are within your Team Explorer. And if you've got your reports service set up and your Excel services set up, you're going to see these options. If you're not using MOS as your SharePoint portal, then you're most likely not going to see these features. So I highly advise you to get a MOS set up as your SharePoint so you have this information available to you. So let's just start with reports right here. And the reports, there's a warehouse that lives with TFS that automatically gets updated every 30 minutes. It's default out of the box. You can change that if you want. And you can actually manually run that if you need it to rebuild at any point in time. But so here I'm going to show some data that's a year old, so we don't have to worry about that at this point in time. First thing we'll do is we'll look at maybe some trends. So let's look at bug trends. I'll just go ahead and double click that to bring it up. And it's going to bring the report up for me within within Visual Studio, within Team Explorer framework here. And it's going to take a couple minutes for it to go. It's going to default some settings. I'll go there and once it comes up, I'll change those settings so we can actually see some data. And believe me, outside of my VPC, this is usually quite fast. It's maybe a couple seconds to bring up. But as things are, it's going to take its sweet time. Again, if anybody has any questions, feel free to submit those. And Meredith, if you see any, go ahead and ask away. In the meantime, we'll look at the wonderful Source Code Control Explorer there. Still thinking. Just getting patient. I'll try reloading it again. Here it comes. All right, so the report's being generated right now. It's not going to show us anything because I don't have any recent data. But what I can do is go back in time and show what happened about a year ago when this data was originally gathered up. I'm going to leave everything open right now. You can go here, you can see, you can set your iteration. You've got various states that you can set for the defect. You can go in and determine your priority and severity, the area. I'm just going to leave it open right now and just say review report. And it's going to come back. Notice here, now again, this is not a whole lot of interesting, but this is giving us a trend. It's a 7-day trend. It's going to show us how many defects were open, how many defects were resolved, and how many defects were closed based upon the prior 7 days activity. So it trends out for us. And this actually looks pretty good from a resolve rate, meaning that it looks like there was only maybe one defect that was resolved over the prior 7 days, so it gives us a 0.17 there. Depending, if you only had one defect, that's pretty good news. If you've got 100, that's not good news, especially when you look at your 7-day close rate, which was 0. And that could, again, be good or bad depending on the number of defects that you have in place. Some of the things that I like about a report like this also is you've got links to the other reports that are in the system. Also, if I scroll down, you'll notice that it gives you a little bit of information around what this report does for you. How can you use this metric, right? So how does this help you answer questions? And what I can do is, because I've already got this generated, I can just click on one of these links and go to another report fairly quickly. So we can go to, say, we'll go to test plan progress. I can just click on that, and in the real world, the non-VPC presentation mode, it would pop up pretty quickly. And that wasn't so bad. And it came down and gave me another report. Let's open this up and see if we've, because we got to go in here and set our filter again. And it resets my report when I set my date, so it's going to need to be repainted. Again, I'll leave everything wide open except for the dates. And now we've got a nice little trend here that kind of shows how things are progressing. Now, obviously the data is not extremely interesting. In the real world, you're going to see much bigger numbers. You're going to see more hills and valleys in your report. But it does give me, at a glance, some information about what's going on. And say I had selected an iteration, was looking at a particular sprint, I'd get an idea of how my testing is proceeding. So here, if you notice, I've got 6 tests that I intended to have run. 2 are passing, 2 are failing, and 2 are blocked. So if I look at this and say, you know what, as someone that's kind of interested in what's going on from the testing perspective, this is a concern, right? I've only got 2 tests out of 6 that I can actually run and get some good feedback from. And if you look down here, what kind of questions might this? So how much testing is being completed? Are we going to finish on time, right? So if you've got a day left and you see that I've got 100 tests left to run, that's a problem. See how many are passing, failing, and blocked. We've got other links like how to use this report that I won't jump into. But it gives me at a glance kind of an understanding of the health of the sprint. If I come out of Scrum stand-up, daily stand-up, and all I hear as a Scrum Master is that everything's good, everything's good, everything's good, and we're on track, and we've got 2 days left, and I come in here and we've got 100 tests left to run, that would maybe allow me to ask some questions about the team, what they really think is going to be delivered. So it gives me some opportunities. So that's a pretty nice report. Other things we get is maybe, what tests are defined for my story. So I can go in and figure out what is actually being created at the story level for every test. So let me jump around here, and this is what I want. I want stories overview. Where are we at? There we go. So, and this is not just from a testing perspective. This is a nice thing just to, in general, to get a sense of what's going on from a sprint perspective, or even from a release perspective, depending on how you filter your result set. So right here, you'll see what pops up immediately is I've got this story. As a customer, I should be able to remove items from my shopping cart. I can see the percentage of hours are complete, number of hours remaining. I can see number of test points. Number of test points are the tests that I have defined, unique tests that I have defined for this particular story. And that, I don't want to go into too far, but you may have one test case that's written that may have 4 story points depending upon how many configurations I'm using. But I can see in this particular story, I've got half my tests passing, half my tests failing. And I've got one bug that was written up that is now resolved. So this is probably where I'd say, look, I've got 2 test cases that are failing. I've got this one bug that's been written up, it's now resolved. Hey, test team, when are you going to jump in and retest those 2 failed tests so that I know that they're passing at this point in time? So I can, at this little bit of limited data, I can get a pretty good sense that it's these 2 failed tests that are tied to this one resolved bug. So again, at a glance, I can get some pretty good information about what is going on there. Let's look at some other stuff here. I want to see what's going on the bugs that need to be reopened. So somewhere here, I had this all planned out. Probably on my nope. So it's probably bug status. Oh, that's what it is. I wanted reactivation. Very good. So now that's running. Let's get reactivation. So reactivations is important so that we can get a good idea about just how well the stability of the software is trending and just how well bug resolution is truly proceeding through my sprint. So if I've got a high level of reactivation of defects, then I'm probably not going to feel real comfortable that the root of a particular issue is being resolved. Or perhaps maybe there's some funniness going on in my merge effort. So let's go ahead and view this report. Again, probably not very interesting, but you can see that we can go in here and very quickly find out what is going on in terms of bugs that are being reopened. So it gives me a particular graph to say, well, this many was resolved, and if I had something that was reactivated and still active, meaning that as a tester I went in and said this bug is not fixed, or it was previously closed and now it's open again, I can get a good sense of what's going on there. Another real nice feature, and I'm going to go ahead, hopefully I can get this without causing too much bogginess on my system, is to talk about test impact. Because test impact is really important as we go through and estimate the effort of testing on a particular story. Again, we're taking our best guess, because as humans we're terrible at estimating anything, which is what's so great about Agile, is we get to re-estimate quite frequently. But we don't know everything up front. The best time to estimate something is when you're actually done with that work, and you can actually see how long it's going to take. But so what we'd like to do is be able to, as quickly as possible, figure out what is the impact of some of the changes on the work that's actually occurring. So if I get a new build, I would like to know, well, just how much of what I was doing is really going to be meaningful, if you will. So it was based upon what I was planning, was I correct? And I'm going to select the right option here so that we can get going. I can go in here, start by understanding test impact. This is another feature that must be turned on. If you recall, if you noticed when I was going through my test settings about 15 minutes ago, one of the options was talk about test impact. So I have to turn on my test impact. But I can go in and assign builds. This is in Test Manager. I'm not sure if everybody's using that yet. But I can go in here and look at my assigned build. And right away I can see between this build that's in use and my available build, and I've got various builds that I can assign, my latest, I can already see what things have changed. So this is really a nice release notes, if you will. I can see exactly what's changed. But I want to know, what I don't get here is what tests actually changed. So I can take and select a build, and I'm going to select the latest build, because who wants to test anything other than the most latest build, right? And I'm going to say I'm going to assign it to my current plan, And it's going to go through and say, hey, based upon what you originally or had previously tested or had assigned to your test manager, I found that there are some tests that are impacted by the most recent change. So I can say view recommended tests, and very quickly it's going to come out and say, here's the impact of these code changes on your existing tests. And voila, there we go. We see that there are 2 tests that have previously been passed that coding changes is going to require that I rerun those tests. Now, if I go through this exercise, and again, we get that final build that's mere minutes from doing our demo of our changes in our sprint to the stakeholders, if I've got 50, 60 of these tests sitting here, we're probably going to have a all hands on deck or some kind of discussion around how we're going to work through this. But this is not nearly a quantifiable number up front. I do get a good idea of just how many things are affecting the current build. So that's test impact. Other things that we can look at, and I'm going to go ahead and shut this down and go back to Visual Studio, is our code churn. We can get code churn from our build quality indicators. So let me go ahead and start this up. This is a nice little tool or nice little report too. It does more than just code churn. But code churn is kind of important to understand. Hey, if we thought this would be a small change, and small change might be, okay, I've got to change 5 lines of code, I can rebuild and we can deploy. That's good to know, but maybe as a tester, I'm reluctant to believe that only 5 lines of code were changed. I'd kind of like to know really what was going on within the system there. And code churn is going to help me understand that. It tells me that it's sort of building the thing out. There we go. And so what I can do is I can go through and say, hey, what's been going on with the builds here, right? So I want to see, it would seem like they've finished based on code and metrics and testing passed. So it also gives me more feedback. Let me see if I can get this to actually show me some data here. Should be some. I actually have to select some options here. But it's telling me right here, if you notice on the bill itself, hey dummy, go ahead and select some options. Let's go ahead and select our platform. It's thinking. I'll try to push it along by selecting it once again. And we'll go in debug. And we'll look at our build definition. Right now we've only got 1. Real nice when you've only got 1. And we'll go ahead and view the report. Now what's going to give me is a graph that's going to show me some pretty decent information over time. So I can see here, even though we didn't have any unit tests running, which I think, interesting, but we can see that over time we had a lot of changes to the code. Then we didn't do anything for a while. We actually got some unit tests running and passing, which is excellent. We had a bunch more code that was changed, and we continue to have our unit test passing. And then over time, as we didn't have more code changing, but our unit tests continue to pass, which is also good from a test passing perspective. I would like to see maybe a little bit more code churn over time. But this is real nice to help a lot of people understand the stability of the application. And maybe if we have 6,000 lines of code being modified and 24 unit tests, maybe I'm being a little aggressive in thinking that I've got great tests going on within my unit test. I'd like to see a whole bunch more unit tests. But it is good to see that I've got lots of past tests, which might indicate that if unit tests potentially are breaking, that developers are finding that out building locally and modifying unit tests and checking everything in as a great working package. So this does, to a certain degree, give me the ability to see just how good some of the things are occurring over time. And notice that it actually labels from build to build to build. In this current view, I can't see every build, but I am able to, if I have a wider viewing area, I would be able to see exactly from build to build exactly how this transpired over time. All right, so enough about what the reports give us. Let's go into a similar area and look at what we have from Excel reports. Now, Excel reports, we get quite a few more things out of the box. And if you notice, just from, we got a lot of test management and we got a lot of bug stuff. Notice all it's build, test, bugs, churn, a lot of things to happen that support the testing activities. So, again, as a QA professional, I really like to see that. But we also have here, if you notice, we have similar reports. We've got build quality, right? Bug progress, bug reactivation. A lot of things are the same. But let's just go ahead and open up the build quality. And I got a nice warning to say that Excel might harm my computer, I think. And I want to make sure that I enable my content. I can trust this all the time, but on the VPC, it always gets reset, so I have to reset it every time. And what it's going to do now is I can go over here and look at some information around the builds. Now, another nice thing here is we see test activity per build. The same report I'm seeing by build what tests have been run. So here I can see we failed 2 tests, actual manual tests, on this particular build. So this is a real nice count. And I can also see that we passed unit tests and we passed a couple manual tests. I only know that because I'm familiar with the data. You'd have to actually kind of dig in and find out why that might be. But let's say that I'm curious, I want to find out more information, and I don't have this out of the box. I really want to show how we can set up and get some good indicator here very quickly, given that your environment runs fast. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create my own report here real quick. So I just started a new worksheet, and I'm going to then go in and insert pivot. Let's go ahead and insert a pivot onto this worksheet. And I'm going to use external data source. I'm going to use the same data connection that's already associated with this Excel, which makes it kind of nice. It makes it easy for me. And I like easy. So you can see it's tested up just like how we prefer to see. So let's just start by selecting, it's going to take its time here as I scroll down. Start by selecting, that's what I wanted, some values. I'm going to put this in my report filter, my team project hierarchy, and let's go to area hierarchy. So these are all things that are associated with how you set up TFS initially. And then let's go into, put some row labels. So let's find, let's go, do I have to go any slower? Try to find our test configuration. I know it's in here somewhere. And I'm going to filter this just because I'll have fewer options and maybe get through here a little bit faster. There we go, configuration. And I'm going to go ahead and put in configuration name. So just drag and drop it down there. And I'm going to look at my test results and also create an outcome. Oops, that's what I wanted. Row. Again, I can just drag it and drop it. Looks like it didn't successfully insert my label there. I'll have to wait for it to catch up. It's thinking. I'm going to do is I defer my layout so that it does speed up just a little bit. And we'll try to get those things in here again. Bear with me while I find my stuff again. I'm going to find my test case area. There we go. And does that, okay, I got my test configuration. And let's try dropping this in here. There we go. And then we'll go into test results and find our outcome. There we go. And let's put some columns in there. So we can do this nicely enough. I can do this by build. So let's come up here to build. I'm going to put in my build name and drop that in as my column. And then, of course, we like to have values. So I'll go ahead back down to my tests. And let's find my straight up test. All I want. I think I passed it already. Work item, test run, test. Case. Oh, there we go. Of course, right there. Last place I look, right? And then we'll go ahead and pull in the result count as my values. And I'll go ahead and update this. And this is where we'll see just the magic occur. So now I can see by build name, I can see my configuration, what was run, right? And what was failed, what was never run. Let's modify this just a little bit. I'm going to drag the build down here. I should turn off my defer update so that it goes faster. And let's put configuration up here. Right, so it did not defer. Stop. And I'll just keep trying to grab it. And okay, now we can update it. So you can mess with this data very quickly. And now you can find out from my configuration how things are running, right? What's blocked, what's failed, what maybe has never run. I can see what's passed. I can see what's passed by build. And because my builds are usually in an order that makes some kind of a duration or sequentially logical order, I can kind of see over time how things are progressing. I can see just how many times we pretty much run the test. So I think, as if I was the QA manager or someone that's responsible for the quality, I can get a pretty good sense of just where we're at for our testing efforts and the quality of the application. Okay, at this time, I will go ahead and open up the conversation or questions. Meredith, did we have some questions from the group?
Sorry about that, Byron. Yes, we did. And just as a reminder to everyone, to ask a question, click on the Q&A button located in the top left side of your toolbar, type your question, then click the Ask button. One of the questions that came through was, can we get metrics from test automation run that are not integrated with a build, i.e. not run from MTM?
Well, that's a very good question. Everything that we're getting for metrics right now out of TFS is pulled from the TFS database or the TFS warehouse database. Now, that's not to say that you can't figure out a way to feed that information in, but it's more of it's not an active, but rather maybe a passive form of data gathering. You got to feed it into TFS. Once you get it fed in there, you can certainly, depending on how you set up your templates and do other things, you can certainly get that data to feed into your warehouse. I would maybe suggest a mechanism for updating, say, a work item within TFS, and then once it's embedded in the work item, it's easy to gather that data into the back end.
Thanks, Byron. Another question that came through was, what steps are involved or how granular you need to be when creating the test cases in MTM to make recommended tests test impact analysis to work?
Well, okay. I will try to phrase this in a way that doesn't sound too overbearing from an agile perspective, but tests should always have intent, right? So I like to think about intent, and tests should always be repeatable. If I get a test and my neighbor there gets a test, and we both execute it, and we get a different outcome running what we feel is the identical test, then it's probably not a test that's very useful. There needs to be more granularity within the test. So in some cases, you can create tests that are not very granular, depending upon the knowledge of the people that are actually running the test. But tests should also be repeatable. The reason for that is I don't want to have defects getting into production because someone ran a test slightly differently. It may be valid based upon how it's created, but did not find a defect. And that really is what test cases should be designed to do, is to help you identify quality issues within the applications you're planning on delivering. So if you want good feedback from a test case, whether it's metrics or to prove that you've indeed put out quality software, make sure you do have that level of granularity to meet that goal.
Thanks, Byron. Another question was, as an agile development team, why should we be interested in collecting long-term metrics?
Yeah, that's something that that's a great question. I've actually heard teams say, well, we shouldn't even be focused on this because it does not help us meet the story deliverables. It does not help us as a team to improve our velocity. There's various things that I've heard that people have argued that you should not be doing any activities that might meet long-range goals. But I think that we all have to understand that everything that we do, whether it's internal work for your company, so your main constituency may be internal users, or maybe you've got a website with a lot of users and it's open to the public, or perhaps you sell what we call shrink wrap software. You need to understand that somebody needs to make a judgment call, and that somebody is generally the person that works in the accounting or the financial aspect of things, to determine if there's value in having you do that work. So, we get our paychecks from somebody, and we want to make sure that they understand and can measure the effectiveness of the work that we're putting in so they can justify having us do the work. So part of the business value that we can bring as agile project teams is to make sure that everybody is aware and can understand the value that we're bringing to them, and certainly long-term metrics is a great vehicle for that.
Thank you, Byron. That sounded very helpful. Another question that came through was, is there a resource you can point us on how to see TFS with data not coming from MTM runs?
Well, I can't think of any off the top of my head that are necessarily a public. So obviously I've got my own stuff, but I can't necessarily share that because I'm sure there's a lot of NDA stuff around that. If whomever asked that question wants to send an email to Meredith or myself, I'm happy to follow up and maybe give some examples.
Thanks, Byron. One last question. How do I publish a report to a SharePoint site so that the business can click on a single link to see desired information?
That was something that I did not demonstrate very well. Everything that I'm doing here, and something I did not demonstrate I should have, which is even this new report that I saved, I can do a save as, and what it's doing is it's going to save it back up to my TFS portal. And so I just put up here, whoops, no, doesn't really matter what I save it as. But when I save it, and if I go back here, let me see if I can get this to come up. And now, because it's going to share up here, my TFS automatically creates a portal, a SharePoint portal for me, that I can share the links in another document library that's exposed to the business user, or actually share this document library with whomever. So it's really not just a rights assignment. So let me see how quickly this comes up for me. It's going to take a sweet time here. But this is now SharePoint. Everything that I'm doing report-wise or Excel-wise, everything, actually even the work items that I work in, is a SharePoint accessible piece of information. So it's going to take its time here while it spools up the service here. It's a great question. Unfortunately, it's going to take a couple minutes here just to show it. So here, this is SharePoint, right? If I go to, here's my Excel reports. I'm just going to bring up my Excel reports here soon enough. I also have my reports here, which is going to link me to the actual report server URL, which can also be exposed to my business users. I can also take, because it's report server, I can just save it as a PDF or an Excel file or something, and then upload it to somewhere on SharePoint. And let's see if we can get Excel to show up here so they can prove that this is actually going to work. Oh boy. And if you look at the URL down here, it's your standard URL for a document library for SharePoint. And while this is loading, while this query was this project work items, actually it would be filled in with some good project information, such as number of stories of test cases, number of tests, bugs. That's another at-a-glance location for understanding the health of your sprint. And this is out of the box. This is another nice area, this dashboard. Definitely use this. It's generally much, much faster once again. SharePoint really doesn't run alongside Visual Studio and Excel and all this stuff on a tiny little VPC, so I apologize for the speed. Let me see if I can just stop it. I'm not going to stop either. Okay, so here we've got our stuff. Let me see if I can get this to open up. And it's going to think again. There we go. Fun and games. So the standard read. Fills in the web page. And then there's my pivot table report that I had just created and saved off. So this is it's quite easy to share these with whomever you want. Hopefully that answered your question in a very slow manner there.
Thanks, Byron. I'm going to click through a few polling questions, and we greatly appreciate your feedback. The first question, was this content helpful for your business? Yes or no? Thank you, everyone. Second question, please rate the presentation content, excellent, good, or poor. Great, thank you. Last question. Would you like us to schedule a follow-up, yes or no? Great, thank you, everyone. We will be forwarding out the link to view a recording of this webcast once it becomes available. If you have any further questions about this presentation, please feel free to email Byron. And Byron, do you have your email address on the slide that you could pull up really quick for everyone? Byron?
Yes, I do. I stopped sharing my screen. Hold on.
Thank you.
Wow, very good. Let me go ahead and share. Everybody can't read that. There we go. There's full size.
Go, everyone. So if you have any questions, please feel free to email Byron. Again, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us, and I look forward to seeing you on our next webcast. You're now free to disconnect. Thank you.